Cuyahoga County Council Committee of the Whole session to order. We're going to continue with session 5. We have three departments that will be presenting, and then we'll move into session 6. The next session up will be the fiscal officer, and I see Mr. Kennedy is here, so please come forward. What I'd like to do is remind everybody that the purpose of the meeting is for budget hearings and to keep their comments and questions confined to items relating to the budget.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to take a few minutes to just summarize some things related to the budget as it pertains to our fiscal office. The fiscal office of Cuyahoga County comprises a variety of administrative functions and departments. Major areas of responsibility reporting to the fiscal officer are auto title, transfer and recording, real property, general accounting and financial reporting, the Office of Budget Management, records retention, appraisal, the Office of Procurement and Diversity, and general services. Additionally, the fiscal office has responsibility over the budgetary aspects of the Consumer Affairs Office and works in conjunction with the administrative arm of the Board of Revision. Our proposed budget for 2016 and 2017 includes provision for 298 and 299 full-time equivalent positions, respectively. Our total appropriation requests for each year total over $25 million, with the bulk of our expenses being charged to the Real Estate Assessment Fund and the General Fund. General Fund expenses in 2016 and 2017 are expected to be slightly under $12 million per year. Since my confirmation by council in April, I've been examining the operations and performance of the various departments comprising the fiscal office. I still have much to do in that regard, as staffing issues have focused the majority of my attention on the budget and completion of the 2014 financial audit. I am confident, however, that the 2016-2017 budget requests submitted on behalf of the fiscal office is both sufficient and efficient in terms of its ability to support our operations throughout the biennium. In line with the executive's request to evaluate possible expense reductions or realignments to the biennium budget that would lessen the burden on the general fund, I have looked at what expenditures incurred by the fiscal office could be either eliminated or reduced or shifted to revenue sources other than the general fund. There are a number of expense issues that we have proposed to be moved to funding sources outside the general fund in this budget. A review of our costs associated with real property and appraisal services indicated that we could move some of these items traditionally associated with the general fund into the REA fund. I asked and received confirmation from the law department that REA funds could be used for these purposes, which relate to daily operational costs such as payroll and project costs associated with the acquisition of the new real property tax system, which has recently been authorized by County Council. With consideration to the proposed reallocation of expenses from the general fund to the REA fund in 2016 and 2017, the ending fund balance of the REA fund is expected to increase over the biennium. Our actual ending balance in 2014 in the REA fund was just under $15 million. That amount is expected to be approximately $18.5 million in 2016 and $21.8 million in 2017. The overall budget for the fiscal office presented to you represents a reduction of approximately 14% from our 2015 projected expense level. We looked closely at all the needs of the fiscal office and were able to determine that through a combination of additional revenue infusion and some expense reductions, we could lower our overall operating costs while still maintaining efforts to improve our level of service to both our internal customers and our responsibilities to the general public. We have proposed to eliminate some traditional vacancies that have been funded for a number of years and have reduced by 50% our projected use of a personal service contract related to maintenance of our accounting system. We will move forward later this year with an addition of a grants manager position as recommended by the state auditor and propose to expand that function by an additional position in 2017. In conjunction with the addition of a deputy fiscal officer, I'm confident we will have the appropriate resources in place to address all of the concerns outlined by the state auditors as outlined in the state auditor's recommendations to management, as well as many of the other priorities we have to negotiate over the next 2 to 4 years. We anticipate initiating the implementation of a new real property tax system prior to the end of 2015 and are developing project plans to move this program forward over the course of the next 24 months. Similarly, we hope to gain momentum shortly with the ERP project, which, although it's a huge undertaking, will produce immeasurable results in terms of both efficiency and cost, particularly for our office. It is important to get both of these major initiatives on a fast track, as we have an inordinate number of employees who are eligible, or will be shortly, to retire from service. It's important both from a cost savings and efficiency standpoint to tap into the resources and institutional knowledge that these employees possess before they terminate their employment with the county. Moving both of these projects forward is a priority of the fiscal office and one that I will pay close attention to in the immediate future. We will also be opening a new Title Bureau office at Golden Gate in Mayfield Heights next year, an expansion that we will hope will generate additional revenue for the county by offering a location competitive with Lake County. To help ease the burden on the general fund in 2016-2017, we will also be increasing the revenue contribution from the Certificate of Title Fund to $1 million per year over the biennium. The addition of the new office will require the expansion of our Title Bureau full-time equivalent base by 7 positions over the biennium. There is a healthy list of projects and initiatives that the fiscal office will tackle over the biennium, in addition to the issues that I've referenced in this document. I'm sure that our budget submission will provide us with the appropriate level of resources to get these tasks accomplished, and that we can continue to improve our county services offered to our residents and business community. I would thank you for allowing me this time on your schedule to discuss our budget with you. We truly respect our obligation to manage the county's finances responsibly and appreciate the efforts of all departments and agencies in formulating requests for this budget. I believe we have provided responses to the preliminary questions offered to us by council staff, and would be happy at this time to answer any additional inquiries you may have.
Very good, thank you. Any questions of the, Ms. Brown?
You stated that you reduced the vacancies. Do you know exactly how many there were?
I should have that. We eliminated a budget management analyst position, a grant staff secretary, and 4 call center operators.
And 4 call center operators. So their functions won't have an impact on productivity, or will their responsibilities, have they been shifted?
I think with the staff that we have in place and with the few proposed additions we have in this budget, will be adequate to continue or even improve services. We just need to realign some of the areas of responsibility. But I don't think elimination of any of these vacancies is going to have an impact negatively on our level of service.
Okay, and then you mentioned the new office, the title office. There'll be 7 new positions, or will you be realigning those as well?
I'm not sure, but I do believe that we're going to shift some people from the existing offices, both down here and the other regional locations, to staff that, and then we'll have to backfill those positions. Because we wouldn't put all new people out in a newly opened office.
Okay, and then with regards to the projections, you stated that we're looking at 1 million per year. Is that net or gross?
That would be a net transfer from that fund.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you and the administration on the appointment of Maggie Keenan as the new Director of budget and management. She has a lot of experience, and I'm sure that she'll serve us well. My question is that there was an item where it was reported that we were going to move $4 million from the general fund into a special account, and we asked a question about it, and the answer came back that we considered doing that, but after further consideration, that transfer was not included in the budget proposal. And I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit more about what that involved, what was considered, and why we decided not to do that.
Councilman Miller, is that $4 million for what particular fund? Do you remember? There's been a lot of transfers talked about.
It says, there is a one-time shift of expenses from the general fund of $4 million to special accounts. And the question we asked was, what are these special accounts? And the answer we got back was that we in fact had considered making that transfer but decided not to do so. And so I just wanted a little more explanation on that.
It is, I believe the $4 million is the auto title transfer funds?
Yes, the amount in question was to come from the auto title. We instead, in the budget previously, in previous years, there have been $500,000 from that fund transferred to the general fund. We increased that on an ongoing basis to $1 million, but we did not take a one-time allocation of $4 million that we were considering.
So the $4 million would have been from the auto title fund to the general fund?
Yes. Yes, that was initially proposed, but because there's some build-outs and there's a proposed RFP to go out on the street if it hasn't already about relocation to another center, we decided to keep the fund balance intact. The funding in the certificate of title fund is sufficient to raise the annual amount of the transfer from what, as Chris said, was traditionally $500,000 to $1 million each year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Along those same lines with the 4 million. So I'm trying to understand. The 4 million is sitting in the revenue is sitting in a special title fund. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, there are funds from auto titles that are collected. All those funds that we charge for auto titles are collected in that special revenue account. And so there are funds sitting in a special revenue account. Those funds are allowed to be transferred to the general fund without a specific reason. But we chose to leave them as for what the director is speaking to in terms of the build-outs of the 3 new offices.
Okay, so the money then has been identified as the source for build-out of 3 more offices, but you decided right now not to make the transfer request until you have the information necessary to determine the exact cost of those build-outs. Is that?
For I believe, Mr. Chairman, the Golden Gate project, I believe, already has moved and has gone through the appropriations transfer mechanism through council. The remaining 2 offices, I think, are in progress. And these funds would be utilized for those projects.
Do we anticipate the full 4 million being the? Am I just in the fiscal? Who do I address this question to? The fiscal officer?
I can answer that. Okay. Depending on the results from the RFQ going out for the relocation of one of our offices, I would expect that the 4 million will be sufficient. We'll probably have a residual balance, maybe about $1 million.
And when is it expected to have these projects complete?
I do know that they're working on the preliminary plans right now, so I would expect that they would issue an RFP or an RFQ either late this year or the beginning of next year.
Okay. And just a question, during your opening statements, you mentioned something to the effect that you're responsible for budgetary aspects of consumer affairs. Did I get that correctly?
Correct.
So what does that mean?
They're still incorporated budgetarily under the fiscal office, but operationally, they report to Mr. Bova.
Okay, so, Mr. Triazzi, our ordinance states clearly that the consumer affairs reports to the fiscal officer. We raised this a month ago during the appointment. Why is that not, why does the operations not reflect the legislation?
Mr. Chair, the ordinance states that the director reports to both the fiscal office and the county executive. So it's a very unusual, unique reporting structure within that ordinance. So that it's a dual reporting structure. So given the history of weights and measures being within the fiscal office, I took that to. I'm just assuming that that's the justification to have a department-to-department reporting structure, but the ordinance does specify both the fiscal office and the county executive as the reporting chain.
And so in this instance, the executive has transitioned the responsibility at his discretion to the chief of public safety?
The chief, the structure, these are all reports to the executive. The chief structure is to facilitate that reporting mechanism. The reporting is to the executive, and the executive has the discretion then to organize and facilitate the system of that reporting. The chief is directly accountable to the executive as well.
Okay.
If I could get one thing, that weights and measures by the Ohio Revised Code is under the county auditor's responsibility, so I believe that's why that portion still is managed by the fiscal office. I believe longer term, it was decided to move it to Mr. Bova for enforcement, since we didn't have any mechanism for enforcement procedures against violations.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure I recall it that way. I'll take the law director's recommendation. Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Not a question, and I don't want to hold up what I know is a lot of business in front of us. But to the issue that you just raised, I'd like to, suggest that the council, in some committee, that's always been, consumer affairs. Yes, weights and measures used to be was always under the auditor's offices all over the state of Ohio still. That we have that some committee at the appropriate time, take a look into how this is several of these structural issues that we're not clear about, and I'll give the administration enough room to organize itself in the way that it wants to organize itself. But after a year, I think it would be a good time for the council to review exactly how this organization, exactly how this administration actually is organized, just so we can understand it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thank you for that. Anything else? Hearing none, thank you. If you would just please provide the clerk with your opening remarks
Thank you.
for the record. Next up on the agenda is our friend, Mr. Murray. I'm sure he's relishing his role as treasurer, not as director of OBM this year. Please push the button.
I will push the button, yes.
Great, thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Chairman Greenspan, President Brady, members of council, good afternoon. I'd like to present just a few brief facts about the treasurer's budget, and then we can certainly, I can certainly answer any questions that you may have. The treasurer's budget for 2016 is approximately $21.4 million. It is comprised of the general fund of about $2 million, and then the balance of the resources are from three statutorily created special revenue funds: our delinquent tax collection fund, our tax certificate administration fund, and there's a tax prepay interest account. And I'm looking primarily at the budget narrative in your your executive recommended budget packet. As you can see, the source of funds, primarily charges for services, the miscellaneous source of funds in the circle is actually delinquent taxes, which go to fund our statutorily, our agreement, our agreement with the land bank. So that is land bank funding. The use of funds, as you can see, is primarily in tax collection, treasury management, and then there's also the utilization, the county land reutilization fund, which is, again, the land bank. I can report to you that using the special revenue funds that we currently have, I have been able to achieve or actually exceed the 10% reduction. So we're actually moving forward with a 12% reduction. And what I've been able to do, along with the staff and administration, is move some of our FTEs from the general fund to the special revenue funds to cover expenses that can properly be placed there. I've also reduced 2 contracts that are no longer needed for maintenance. In terms of initiatives, very briefly again, there's 3 that I'd like to discuss. The first would be, as you can see in the budget, we are using some of our special revenue fund balances to fund a portion of the demolition fund commitment for 2016. They will be dispersed between the 3 special revenue funds that I've already mentioned. We are still, there's still some questions as to how that mix will be comprised, but the treasury commitment or the commitment for the property demolition fund will be funded by the special revenue funds. We have also moved forward with an initiative that actually Councilman Jones discussed during my confirmation. We are now offering a second tax payment plan for non-owner occupied parcels, i.e. commercial and rental property owners. We are asking for a 25% down payment for that, for entry into this particular payment plan, and that will allow us to bring the taxpayers in, get them started on this would actually be a second tax payment plan for 24 months. I don't have data on that because we just started it in September, but anecdotally, we are getting positive response from our commercial owners. And finally, I have, part of my budget proposal has been to ask for 1 additional FTE to help me reconstitute a tax delinquency unit. At this point, with the staffing that we have, we are essentially a collection unit, a collection agency. What I would like to do is reconstitute our tax delinquency unit. This unit will allow us to proactively reach out to taxpayers that may be at risk for tax delinquency, but not in that status yet. I also need staff that will work with the county prosecutor's office for any support that they need for foreclosure actions against parcels that may need it. And also, I need a group of people that are dedicated to attack the tax delinquency issue as a whole. There are, of course, strategies that can be utilized that are working in other counties. We need the people to do the research, to bring that research forward, and try different avenues to raise the funds that we need for our communities. Finally, even though we are currently in negotiations, I do want to tell you that we are working with our tax lien purchaser, and we are in negotiations with them as we speak. At this point, I can say that they are negotiating with us, And we hope to have a tax lien sale very shortly, as I indicated during my confirmation. So I'm ready to take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for the treasurer? Mr. Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned there's other counties are actively engaging in different strategies to collect these delinquent tax balances that are owed. You know, you and I have met and talked about this whole tax lien certificate sales and the servicer that we operate with. How close are we with the folks who are doing the research, if they've already started, of finding another way to deal with collecting these back taxes? You know, the tax lien certificate sales are one of the main issues aside of foreclosure, general foreclosure, that people in the communities that I represent are losing their homes. It is individuals who are on these lists whose homes are being taken from them for $1,500, $2,000. And I get it's the fact that they've been delinquent for a period of time, but the dollar amount is what sticks with me.
In terms of research, Councilman, I can tell you that I've reached out to one of my brethren in the state of Ohio, and there are some strategies that they're using that, quite frankly, I don't believe the county has before. Some high-touch strategies, just as an example, robocalls to continually remind our taxpayers of their obligations to the community. I will say this: without the unit, there's not much that I can do beyond some phone calls and note taking. I really need the people that will help me to devise a different strategy than the tax lien sale. The tax lien sale is to some degree a last resort. It's not the first arrow in my quiver that I would use. But at this point, I need it because I don't have viable alternatives. I need the research. I need to do the research and just obviously make sure that whatever we use, you know, there are consumer protections involved, and there's the prodding, but there's also realizing that we need to protect the taxpayers, protect their rights, and obviously we have no desire to take anyone's homes. As a matter of fact, you mentioned before. In many cases, the people that are in our tax lien, in many cases, not always, but in many cases, the people that are in the tax lien situation have been delinquent for at least 2 years, if not longer. So, and they've had, and just to make sure that I clarify this, they've had contact from our office, at least the offer of delinquent tax payment plans. Obviously, we're not quite as, we're a little easier, I think, in terms of the interest involved. We're a little easier than, say, a private company would be. So we make every attempt to bring the individuals in. I think part of the challenge that we have is that many of our customers, once they get behind, they tend to be alarmed, and they, as opposed to coming in, I can't work with you. I think we talked about it before. I can't work with you if I can't get you into the office. And we've got 12,000 people. We think we're going to see over 12,000 people, unique visits in the office this year, 60,000 phone calls. I can work with. I can help you pay by phone, by email, by electronic methods, Dropbox. I'm doing pretty much everything besides coming to their house. So I do get the frustration, and I'm keenly aware of the fact that we need to be very careful who we expose to that process.
Well, I appreciate your attempts to help remedy this issue that we're finding a remedy for this situation that we're having. One thing I will give you credit on is that some local CDCs, even in the areas that I represent, had worked with the county to send out letters to individuals. Yes. And I think that also helped with the amount of response that you guys have seen for folks wanting to resolve their tax delinquency issues. So I hope that we possibly can extend that effort that's been put out there to work with the local development corporations to contact the people that they know, because they do the work in those communities, to really heighten that and put and make that a even better initiative that you guys have already created. To the other point, I guess it's time for us to reconvene again to talk about this issue and kind of find ways to do this. So just to clarify, so is it you're asking for funding to create this, to put together this body to do this work, or clarify that for me?
Sure. The existing budget that I have, I can take the vacancies that I have, and as I bring them, as I fill these vacancies, they will constitute the tax response unit. I need one additional person on top of what I already have in the budget. And by the way, these are non-general fund resources for this particular individual. I need someone that's going to help me do the research. We collect taxes very well, but there's going to be some different skills that are going to be needed if we're going to go that one extra mile and really engage our at-risk taxpayers before they get themselves into troublesome situations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Brady?
Thank you. Good to see you, Mr. Murray. Is one, you call it FTC, is one person enough?
Well, after 23 years in the Office of Budget Management Accountsman, I'm very sensitive to the idea of additional staff. What I will say this to you is, I think that I'm not entirely convinced that I need additional staff until I can pull the resources that I currently have in the budget and maybe change the focus ever so slightly with this new staff. Obviously, I'd love to be able to leverage the real property system that we're currently developing with the fiscal office. I think that will help me, but I don't want to just bring people on to man phones. I need.
No. Mr. Chairman, just to quickly follow up. There, as you know better than we do, there have been lots of turnover in this department since the beginning of the new the new government almost 5 years ago, and this is like many things, but this is a very critical part of what the county does in order to sustain itself. And it's the impression, and I don't know whether people that I get calls from are who they are exactly, because it's a big county, and sometimes I don't know if somebody's a former employee or somebody who knows a former employee, whatever. But the general thing we hear, I'm sure you're very familiar with it, is that you're very, very not you. The department is very, very understaffed, and that it's leading to serious issues for the county. And so I'll just finish with that, except to say that there's a great concern there, and so I would want to say that we should monitor this and help us monitor this very carefully.
Sure.
I don't know how far down we are in the treasurer's office from where we were 5 years ago. Do you have any general sense of that?
My recollection, I had to look to my OBM brethren, but my recollection was maybe 70, 75.
75.
75 FTEs. Well, actually, this is before the new administration changed. I think what I wanted to make sure that everyone keeps this in mind is that in years past, the early retirement program, the part of the commitment was made that this would have to be permanent reduction. So I lost quite a bit of staff and I lost a lot of institutional memory actually when people left, and it takes time to go through these tax cycles to build that capacity back.
I know instinctively, like everybody does, that under the old system, that there were more employees in general, then we're needed. Boy, you can really cut to the quick here, and I'm very concerned about this department's ability to be staffed, minimally, appropriately, to carry out its functions, and that has nothing to do with you. It's what I've been hearing, from people for over, over 4 years at least. So I just wanted to voice that it's that's a lot of people. It's a big county.
We're small, but we work hard.
I know you do.
Mr. Gervana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick, we heard from Nate Kelly that demolition was going to be coming under the development department, but I see we got 10 million here. If you could just explain, this is, I could see the revenue is coming from these different funds. He's got responsibility for the demolition, but not the budget for it.
I think what I would say is I believe development has the administrative responsibility, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the development has the administrative responsibility for achieving the program goals. What I am, in this case, I am merely a funding source.
Oh, and then Mr. Hairston had a question. So while would you mind entertaining us until Mr. Hairston gets back?
Sure. I have, two people walk into a bar, and no,
Well, I'll tell you
not
what.
today. I don't have any.
I'll tell you. Well, I'll ask Mr. Hairston to submit his comment to you in writing. Any other questions? No. A question regarding actually, I might fill the time here. Property tax bills. Are we on time?
We are on time.
We're on track to get them out by.
We are on track. We just finished third billing on the 28th.
Okay.
We'll post those payments, and then in, let's say, the middle of December, we should have tax bills, provided everything goes correctly with some other interrelated processes. We should have tax bills ready to go in the middle of September, and we close first half billing third week in January.
Middle of December, not September.
Middle of December.
Okay.
For the tax bills, right.
Originally you
Third
said
billing
September.
was in September.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and tax lien. We also, well, just to give you some context, we also mailed out 5,400 letters for people that are in tax lien status. And actually, at this point, I can happily say that 2,000 people have responded either with full payments or they've come in to make payment arrangements. So that universe is smaller, significantly smaller.
Okay. All right, great. And kind of piggybacking on Mr. Brady's question regarding your FTE level. Talk to me a little bit about attrition this year. Where did you start the year? Where are you now? How many positions do you have open?
I believe right now my budget was 43 FTEs. I'm at 36 at this point. So I'm obviously working through HR and PRC to fill those positions, but that does take time. Much of that variance between projected and the budget, much of that will constitute my tax response, my delinquent tax response unit, which I think is critical.
Okay, so maybe there's a question I'm trying to fill until Mr. Harrison gets back. So not really, I've got questions, but as I understand the budget, if Mr. Murray has 43 budgeted but only 36 filled, say at the end of the year, those extra 7, are those being put into that payroll or that FTE account?
Yes, Mr. Murray is one of the executive agencies So those seven, the funding for those 7 FTEs are in the miscellaneous account. As Mr. Murray brings those folks on, the money will be transferred back to Treasury.
Will that, at the time of, that those employees are filled, say in January, will that then, in essence, I might have already asked this question earlier, but would that in essence cause his department to go over budget because it wasn't in the approved budget, but then the payroll dollars transfer in?
The way appropriations work is that it's for the entire year. So his budget in terms of going over budget would not occur until much later in the year. But yes, at the time that the hires are made, we will make the transfer. Of the 7 positions though, 2 of them are general fund and 5 are other special revenue accounts. So the 2 that are general fund are in the vacancy miscellaneous category, and the other 5 would be just funded by the special revenue accounts.
Okay. All right. I received word Mr. Hairston has no questions. So Mr. Jones, however, does have a question.
Some residents received tax bills, but they were in error. Was there, and I'm getting this from the audit review that we had a few days ago. Can you speak to that a little, and what happened and what corrections were made?
My understanding is that there was a last minute change to the tax rates that didn't get to Columbus and then bounce back to the Treasury so that we could correct the bills. This happened, I believe, earlier, maybe first quarter or last year, I can't remember. Anyway, what has since occurred is restitution has been made to the taxpayers of record. They received checks at over a certain dollar amount. They received refund checks. My understanding is that has already been taken care of. If that answers your question.
It wasn't any outcropping of staffing levels? Or,
my understanding is no. My understanding is that was not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you. If you would please provide the clerk with your opening remarks for the record. Thank you. The next item, and candidly, I don't know who's speaking on this, is the Department of Human Resources. The interim outgoing director, Director Durkin, will be presenting.
Good afternoon. Lisa Durkin for the Department of Human Resources. Thank you for hearing my presentation today. It is my privilege to be before you one final time after 17 years of service to this county. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what each of the divisions have been working on for the past year in HR and where we're at with that, and then talk about the slight budget reductions that we made. As you know, we have several divisions in HR. The coordination of their duties is substantial and important to the service delivery to all of the agencies of the county to address the needs that the county must provide the county citizens. Starting in our payroll or our time and attendance division, they continue to prepare gross payroll, coordinating with employee leaves of every type and guaranteeing administration of the compensation for all non-bargaining and for over 30 bargaining units under the county executive. The department is gearing up for preparing for the major transition that will be the transition to the new ERP system. Re-engineering of processes will be substantial in that department and will be of the essence with the new system. Our training and staff development division in human resources, in June, we presented to the administration and in particular to the directors asking for their feedback a new draft of a training and staff development catalog that we are planning to roll out in 2016. This catalog was planned to raise staff development to a new high level, investing in our managers and in our frontline staff, and, really asking them to embrace customer service, leadership, and communication in order to develop new and better ways of serving our customers. In benefits, we are currently almost complete with our open enrollment. Open enrollment ends tomorrow. It is ongoing. To date this morning, we have had 5,175 people enrolled, and we urge everyone and remind them to complete their open enrollment by the closing tomorrow. The administration of those benefits for what will end up being over 6,000 county employees is incumbent upon that department, and they deal with those details on a daily basis. In personnel administration, in the past year, we have really focused on how we interact with our partners in the agencies and all over this county. In the past year, we have changed the structure of personnel by intensifying leadership in the areas of management consultation, discipline administration, and onboarding, especially in the areas of health and human services. This includes a more active role in workforce planning with senior management, retraining and leading more dynamic efforts in performance standards and holding employees accountable for that, and more proactive programming in onboarding. I'm pleased to say that this programming, such as anticipatory hiring, has benefited the areas of the county that traditionally see the most turnover, including the jail and health and human services. For instance, in November of 2014, I did report to the administration that we had 63 vacancies over at the Department of Children and Family Services for social worker 3s. These are the people that bear the burden of the caseloads and keeping our children safe in the county. Currently, just about to embark on that same month, a year later, we have only 18 vacancies that are being actively filled at this time. This is in large part due to two focuses that HR zeroed in on. One of them is the anticipatory hiring program, where we said let's have 16 kind of floating vacancies that we will call anticipatory, and we will work to always keep those filled and moving along in that onboarding process, so that when they are done, we can officially move them into a vacant FTE position, which has been very successful for us. And the other is, let's look at where we're recruiting from. Let's look at the real knowledge, skills, and abilities that our successful longer-term social worker 3s have really displayed, and recruiting them, and pinpointing those qualities and recruiting those people resembling those qualities. Whereas last year I came before the administration and said that we have 63 FTEs vacant in social worker 3 classification alone, I can report to you today that we have 54 vacancies in the whole of the Department of Children and Family Services. None of them are longer than a couple of months old, and I'm very proud of that. The onboarding and the coordination of services in our departments in the last year has been a monumental effort in the department, and I feel as though we are gaining great strides in that area by focusing on that. In the past year, we've collaborated with all of our stakeholders. That has been very important to me. We have worked with our directors, many of them new to this county. We've worked with our managers, all the way down to our frontline staff, our unions, and our customers, and we have tried to give all of these folks the tools that they need to be flexible in meeting their initiatives in the most effective government services possible. The budget that we were presented for 2016 was representative of several FTE cuts. When I received the budget, we had already been cut several FTEs. I made mention of two that I thought were difficult to deal with, and those two were in personnel staff in the Health and Human Services area. Currently, we do have in Human Resources 59 full FTEs, and that is inclusive of every division, including Health and Human Services, where at this time last year, we had 69 people working in the Human Resources department. When that budget came to me, I was asked to cut 10%, as all of the departments were, and I looked through the budget, and with the notion in mind of that we were already down staff so much, and that we had an incoming chief talent officer whom I did not want to strip further their ability to commit to effective service levels. I did make the administration aware that I would not be able to cut 10%, and I did not. I cut $23,000 from contracts and professional services, and that was due to the fact that in the last 2 years, we have seen a smaller utilization of independent medical examinations. These are also very costly examinations, which we have entered into talks with our vendors about lowering their prices. So as long as we don't have an onslaught of employees who require independent medical examinations, and as long as we are successful in continuing our talks with our vendors in order to cut those prices, we will be successful in that. We also cut $10,000 from our other operating budget, which consists of printing needs for our training and staff development department. The reason why is because we are planning on rolling out that new programming next year, as I discussed. In that new programming, more than half of the staff development courses and products will be delivered via MyHR, the county employee self-service and training program. So the need for printed materials should decrease with that. And that is the extent to what I offered as cuts. And I, did acknowledge that, any incoming person would need to come in and line up the budget with their priorities. And so I left it at that, and that was well received. I thank you. On a personal note, I would like to just say that it has been my distinct honor to serve this county for 17 years, and it has been my distinct privilege to lead and lead on my own for the past year the good professionals that serve in our Human Resources Department. They work hard, they work creatively, and they strive for excellence in everything they do, and it has been my honor to lead them. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for the director? Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, first of all, I just want to publicly thank you for the outstanding service that you've provided to the county. I think both in terms of competence and in terms of temperament, you've been a real leader and worked collaboratively, and so I say that I'm sorry to see you go, and I wish you the best of success.
Thank you.
And I just have one question, which is that you referred to the budget you received had two cuts in staff in HHS that you thought would be difficult to deal with. My question is were those two positions restored in the final version that was introduced?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Chair.
Mr. Germano?
I just like diddle Mr. Miller's remarks. In particular, your expertise with the benefits part of it has been, you always were able to explain and quantify. What I'm wondering is, how is the regionalization audit going, where we could get back into offering programs? Do you have any feeling for how that audit is working out?
To the chair, to the councilman, I have not been briefed on any findings on the regionalization side of that audit. Yesterday, the benefits manager, Joni Harbaugh, was briefed on the audit on the county side of those benefits. I was not told of anything that raised any red flags to me. But I have been told that they are not ready with the regionalization side, so I have no information to that.
Thank you.
So as a follow-up to that, so that program is on hold. We're not accepting any new applicants.
Currently, we are waiting for that audit to be completed, as I understand it.
Okay. I have a question on the new initiative of the administration on the College Now program. Could you provide some insight into that program?
I'm afraid I cannot provide insight into that program. I am not familiar with that program, and I have not been briefed on that.
Okay, let me pivot. Mr. Glassburn, could you provide us some insight? Some of us are aware of it, but just so the full body is aware of the program, because it's a new initiative.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the College Now program there is different from the $500,000 College Now scholarship program that Council passed a couple years ago. This small amount is intended to retain the services of College Now to assist our employees in developing plans to reduce their student loan debt and to help them find opportunities for furthering their education.
And where else, just give some history, where else has this been used? What are the benefits? Once again, it's a new initiative we're being asked to approve in the budget. We haven't seen, we can go to the 70104 documentation to create the new program, so as much information as you can give would be beneficial.
I'm sure we will have more information on that as we proceed, Mr. Chairman. There are a number of other institutions, including university hospitals, that have utilized College Now for the service for their employees and have had some significant success.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to Director Durkin, gonna miss you. You brought institutional knowledge from the old administration to the new administration, as well as the new charter and implementation of the PRC. I think that you've worked well with council as far as my committee, the PRC, as well as the administration, tying it all in. I know it hasn't been easy along the way, but as echoing Dale and Chuck's sentiments, you have been like an even Steven in that. My question, I guess, would be in regards to the pharmaceutical benefits, and I think it's what, $5 million?
It's 2.5, and actually it's the next item in our tab, 2.5 million.
Yeah, if you can share, because I know when we were having the committees, it was, at the last hearing, it was kind of stated from EBI, but what can we do to keep those costs down in your benefit, in your eyes?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, thank you for your kind remarks. It is difficult in this day and age. Pharmaceutical costs are a scary, scary proposition because the pharmaceutical companies are out there looking at everything they can and how to maximize their own revenues by creating newer and newer good solutions for folks who are suffering from a lot of things, but costly solutions. So what we went through this year was a costly solution to a very deadly disease, and we're thankful for that, but we do have a hard time predicting those things. We also saw where the pharmaceutical industry can become very creative themselves and kind of part of the problem was compound medications, where they recreate different medications in different ways and then charge 3, 4, 5 times what they could have. So it's very difficult to predict. When we looked at our pharmaceutical spend, and I visited with the CFO of the city of Cleveland, and I visited with several other municipalities, and even across the country and in private sector, they were all seeing the same thing, a pharmaceutical cost jump this year. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end. I've already heard of new cancer-related drugs that are upcoming in the next year or 2 or 3 years. So it is very difficult to predict. It is something that when the landscape changes, you then change your program to respond to it as much as you can, and still you reserve the right to offer that quality health care to your employees. So it's a real juggling act, and that is what I can say about that pharmacy spend.
Just to follow up on that, do we have, as an agency, do we have to offer the new drugs or put at least a baseline cost that the county will pay? I mean, we can, I don't know if we can legally do that, but allow the employees to know what the new drugs are, but as long as we've had some medical institutional knowledge that it's not going to impair them what we offer. Can we look in those directions?
Certainly.
To keep our pharmaceutical costs down, because then you have the administration trying to cap for that in the budget, allow that for the budget, when they can, just put our budgets every 2 years crazy. But if we set like a baseline, what the county is willing to pay, it doesn't mean that the employee can't get those new drugs or things, but this is what we're going to pay toward that. And if you want to go this route, do you think that's something we could do?
Certainly, Chair, to the Councilwoman, the benefit design, the benefit structure is reexamined every year. I have had the responsibility in the past 7-8 years of going at that time prior to open enrollment to the administration, discussing the benefit design, discussing the costs involved, and giving them recommendations and helping them to decide on the benefit design to proceed with. The changes that you're discussing would be a change in benefit design. The capping of certain costs for medications and allowing employees to elect medications that will pay a certain part of, and they could pay a certain part of, is not what our current benefit design includes, but certainly is a design that could be adopted by this county in the future.
Thank you.
Great. Just so my colleagues may or may not be aware, the budget includes a $2.5 million in each year increase to the reserve, or not the reserve, to the prescription drug line based on past historical trends. Have been trending higher than what was originally budgeted. So there's $2.5 million in 16 and $2.5 million in 17 that's being added to the expense line on the budget to cover the anticipated increase in health and prescription drug costs. Any questions on that, or anything related to HR? Mr. Jones.
Director Durkins, I just want to thank you for your 17 years of service. You've been a professional, not just in this setting and Board of Controls. You've led this organization, this department well. And yes, we've heard that word quite a bit, institutional knowledge. It will be a challenge when you lose that type of knowledge. So again, I just thank you. I don't really have a question, but thank you for your service. The relationships that you've had with our unions, all of those things are things that need to be considered. And again, I just thank you for your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. And thank you as well.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Also, not on the agenda, but scheduled today, but we removed from the agenda was internal audit. And the internal auditor could not be here today, but she submitted materials to the clerk. So we will be able to hand those out at the appropriate time. If there are any questions, we can direct them directly to the internal auditor. Now we're going to start session 6, which will start with the PRC. And we'll have the director, is that your title, director? Administrator, come forward and begin her presentation. Just push the push button and the green
Okay.
light will
Now I got it. Rebecca Katinsky for the Personnel Review Commission. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, and members of council, to be here today to present to you our budget request for 2016. We've spent a lot of hours over the past couple of weeks hearing from some of our customers about their visions and missions for their departments and divisions. You should know that the PRC's vision is an optimal workforce to support these entities and their missions. And this is ultimately how we serve the citizens of this county. We fulfill our mission by ensuring the county has qualified applicants to choose from, by administering class and comp plans that not only support an employment system that's based on merit and fitness, but also support the county's needs to recruit, retain, and reward an optimal workforce, and by adjudicating appeals through a quasi-judicial process that provides equal footing for the parties in the appeal. As we work to fulfill our charter responsibilities, we embrace as an agency 3 values that guide our work: integrity, efficiency, and superior customer service. We've got good news. The PRC has moved forward on multiple fronts this year. We've resolved 94%, it's updated yesterday, of the 321 appeals that have been filed with us to date. We've established 67 eligibility lists, and we're working currently to establish 47 more. We've recommended changes to 20 classifications to this body, and we're working with 8 different departments right now who have requested our help with reorganizations that impact the county's class plan. We engaged a consultant earlier this year to make pay equity recommendations to county council and to the county executive. And we are just now finishing up a collaborative process with HR to train the county's 800 managers in principles of civil service testing and class and comp administration. Now, here are our challenges. You should be aware that many of the challenges that we face in our work every day arise from the fact that the systems that we're responsible for administering are out of date and out of touch with the county's needs to be competitive in today's labor market. Our class plan has grown by 40% to 425 classifications, yet 150 of those classifications haven't been reviewed for years. Some of them were written and haven't been looked at a second time since 1994. That's 20 years. We found that many of the county's selection procedures for classified positions could be enhanced, and because of this, we're backed up with requests for new tests. Even though the charter clearly states that we have the authority to ensure qualifications, so far we have had to continue to rely on human resources to review applications because we simply don't have the time to do that. To give you a sense of what kind of work is involved with this, the county received 27,000 applications from potential employees last year, and we're, I think, at 10,000 so far this year. All of this work involves a great deal of labor, and some of that work is administrative in nature. So this year we hired some master's level interns to assist us with proctoring, administering, and preparing test materials. We've reduced our testing project completion time from 92 to 47 days, but you should know that that is unacceptable to us. We need to be able to turn around lists of eligible candidates much more quickly than that if the county's going to be able to compete effectively for talent. And while we have some fans across the county who are very supportive of our work, we also know that some of our customers are very frustrated with us because we're not able to deliver our work to them in a timely enough fashion. We're not content either, and that's why we're requesting additional funding from you today. Please consider the following as you evaluate our requests. The county is competing for talent with employers who use systems and technology to notify applicants on their cell phone when a new vacancy meets their skill sets. Other employers are using cloud-based assessments to evaluate candidates. We're using primarily paper and pencil tests. We know companies that are using SurveyMonkey rather than the 16-page paper forms that we're currently using to collect and analyze job information from incumbents. Other employers are using video interviews over the internet to interview applicants from out of their area. Our development this year of job-specific tests to assess unique qualifications has moved the county forward light years, far past those generic civil service tests of the past that had little to no value in predicting future performance. I'm sorry. Could you
No,
bring
I'm
my
asking-
bottle of water, please?
Yeah, I was just,
It's in the back. I apologize.
that's okay. Thank you.
Sudafed, and this is the effect of it. Get my mojo going again, sorry, thank you. To serve our customers, that's the employers, the employees of the county, the hiring managers, and the applicants who are looking for work here at the county. We need to be able to shift to proactive, modernized, and technological, innovative solutions that support the county's efforts to achieve and maintain an optimal workforce. We've got to get these systems up to date. We have to turn our operations around from responding to emergencies to anticipating change and have adaptive and responsive systems that are flexible enough to respond to the changes that we know that go on every day in the workforce and the workplace. The county's systems are the foundations for employment decisions of all kinds: hiring, compensation, training, employee development, performance management. These systems are vital, and they're vital, and they must be flexible to respond to the changing initiatives, funding, and priorities of the county, both in the internal and external environments in which it operates. This work needs to be done soon if the county is going to be able to respond effectively to the silver tsunami, the continued emergence of millennials in the workplace, and the technology advances that all employers are using to get and manage their workforces effectively. We took the county executive's request to reduce our budget seriously, and we were able to make a couple of minor reductions. We no longer need funding for the pay equity study. We are planning to transfer the hearings to a part-time person without benefits and get out of the business of having the independent contractors, and that's another minor reduction in our plans for 2016. But you should also know that the executive's recommended budget for the PRC does not include full funding for the 2 FTEs that we hired in mid-2015 with council's awareness. We were able to absorb those costs for their partial year salaries and benefits because of some of the late hires that we did internally. But because of these reasons, we are requesting additional funding to support a number of plans to move forward. The first thing we're requesting from council is restored funding in the amount of $142,000 for the 2 FTEs that we hired in July of August this year. Because of them and the work that they've contributed to that testing team, our productivity went up about 43% right after they were hired. And I really can't imagine moving forward without those 2 people on our staff. We're also requesting funding for a senior employment testing specialist to function as a team lead who will continue to develop tests and work on some of the broader-based assessments that we'd like to move into, which are like assessment centers where we can contribute more effectively to the county's needs to select really effective managers simply beyond a paper and pencil test. We're requesting additional funding for a class and compensation specialist. This is essentially a reiteration of the request that we put before you last year to have 2 people on that team. 2 specialists on that team, I'm sorry, in addition to the manager. We have 2 people right now who are doing this work. They're addressing 150 outdated classifications. They have a couple of huge problems that are a result of these classifications not being updated over the years. And the system is not built to adapt to the changes in organization and priorities that affect the work that gets done here by the county and by whom. We need to know that we can move to the point that we're proactively managing these systems instead of trying to deal with these on an emergency, on a firefighting kind of basis. We need to get out in front of these. And so our plans are to review this class plan, these 425 classifications, once every 4 years on a regular cycle so that we can ensure they continue to meet the county's needs. We're requesting additional money for licensing, support, and maintenance to support the technology and the systems that we've implemented this year. And the bulk of this request is $25,000 for the Archer Company to conduct point factor evaluations of 100 revised classifications. The challenge here is that the Archer Company continues to hold the proprietary rights to the instrument that determines what our classifications, what pay grade they should be assigned to. So we need to have money available to engage that company to conduct those evaluations when a new position, when a classification is revised or created, they're the ones that assess what pay grade it should be in. And finally, we are requesting an additional $5,400 for computers for the 2.5 new employees. That would be the class and comp specialist and the senior employment testing specialist and a part-time hearing officer.
Sorry, on here, there was a $31,500 item. Are you requesting that, or did you just
That was
skip
for
over it?
professional development. I'm sorry, I skipped right past it. That's for professional development for our staff, most of whom hold professional certifications or log licenses that require continuing education. They also participate in professional organizations that provide access to research, relationships, and innovations that we know will lead to improved practices and increased efficiencies. That pretty much summarizes my presentation at this point. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Lisa Durkin's work with the PRC over the past year. As most of you know, this has been a very fine line, and Lisa and I have worked very hard, and she's been very committed to supporting the work of our agency, and I'd like to acknowledge that. It's made my work easier, it's made our staff's work easier, and I think the county's losing an important asset by seeing her go. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Questions for the administrator? Okay, I'll lead. The additional funding request, if I did my math right, it's $399,960.
That was mine too.
Is that per year?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the licensing was a 2-year licensing deal.
I don't know if I can answer that specifically. I don't know if George, it's annual. Okay.
So all those numbers, the professional development is an annual cost as well?
It would be.
The computers, that's a one-time cost?
Right.
Okay, so in year one is $399, let's round it, 400, year two is $395?
Correct.
Or do you wish to, is this part of a replacement, hardware replacement refresh program?
Hardware
Meaning,
replacement.
every 2 years, do you wish to have
No.
purchased two new? Okay.
We haven't even thought that far ahead, Dave.
Sorry. All right, so 400,000 in year one and 395 in year two.
Correct.
Okay. The two employees you spoke of, the 142,000, I'm assuming all these numbers, the 142, the 90,000, the 85,000, those numbers are fully loaded benefits? Okay.
Yes.
Like, I would expect nothing less out of an HR-related agency. But are you saying that the first two employees, so items number 2 and 3 on your list, the 90,000, the 85,000, those are new hires?
Those are new, correct.
But what you're saying is, if I'm hearing you correctly, is the first item with those two FTEs, that if funding is not approved, you will have to release them?
We will.
Because you will not, and they're currently employed doing work
That's
for the
correct.
PRC? Okay. Okay. I have no further questions. Any other questions? No. Oh, Mr. Jones.
Trying to review this. Your department is one where council added a greater degree of independence through the charter amendment. Is that correct? Help me to.
In fact, we didn't exist before the charter.
Right, did not exist, and as a result of, again, this council, I believe we put a charter amendment that
Correct.
where the board was not obviously appointed by the executive to hear complaints against the executive's employees.
Correct.
So, and I believe we also added those two employee FTEs that you're asking for back as well.
Yes.
That was okay. Not a question, just a
Okay.
okay.
So,
Thank
if
you.
I can ask a question regarding the two employees who effectively their jobs are in jeopardy.
Correct.
Did you communicate this to the administration? Were they aware that if this additional funding was not approved, that these
Yes.
employees would not?
Yes.
Okay, I've just questioned Mr. Glassburn. So are there any other, this is the first I'm aware in this budget where a reduction is being realized in which we'll actually be reducing headcount. Are there any other funding cuts that will reduce in a headcount reduction?
According to the overall FTE count, we will be in total down 10 FTEs across all agencies, but I'm not aware of actual individuals necessarily losing jobs for any other FTE situation.
Okay, so these are the only two. So there's an acknowledgement now that there are two. This is the first I'm hearing of that there are any. So this is the first acknowledgement that we have potentially the loss of 2 current employees due to budget cuts.
These 2 FTEs were added, as was noted, following the previous budget process. And that's these may be the only 2 FTEs that were added following the budget process.
Okay. So let me broaden my question then. So after the approved budget, and you might have just answered it, so maybe it's just clarification. These are the only 2 employees that have been added after the approved budget to whom funding is not being provided to keep them employed with the county. Is that?
If I understood your question correctly, Chairman, I believe that would be yes.
Okay.
The answer would be yes.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kopczynski, first of all, I'd like to state my belief in the pay equity process. I think you conducted a very fine study with the help of the consultant, and I think the administration is on the right track in making a start on what obviously has to be a long-term process, and I think it's very important that we not say, well, we're just gonna do the first step and see where we are. I think we need to have a long-term plan in place, and obviously the primary cost of a pay equity implementation would be for the compensation changes that are going to be needed. But that's not the only cost. It's a very complex process, and it's going to need to be administered. And my question is whether you have resources in the budget as presented to do the things that your department is going to need to do as part of the ongoing implementation of this process.
I believe if you're willing to fund that second position for our class and comp team, we will. We've got in-house expertise out the wazoo. We just don't have enough bodies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have just some follow-up questions directed towards the administration on the creation of positions after the budget. So we have 2 here. There are 2 there, but also we have the Director of Communications. I believe Mr. Taylor's job was a new job after the budget was adopted. There are maybe Ms. Carney's recent change in job title, I'm assuming is a newly created position. But those items are those items in the 2016-17 budget? Those new ads that were added after the originally adopted budget?
Mr. Chairman, in those cases, there were FTEs already aligned to those positions, if not different positions. So for example, in communications, there were 3 FTEs that were consolidated into 2 new positions, but there were 3 FTEs backing them. The 2 FTEs at the PRC did not exist, nor was there any positions eliminated to create that space for them in the first place.
Okay, so it was Mr. Mills or Mr. Taylor's positions. One of the 2 was a new position, if I remember correctly.
I believe that they are part of the overall restructuring that eliminated the deputy chiefs. Mr. Mills's position, I believe, was the consolidation of 2 positions that were the, I don't want to get the title incorrect, but the prison wardens. And Mr. Taylor's was replacing the Deputy Chief of Staff for Justice, Mr. Colon.
So the Chief Innovation Officer and the Chief Talent Officer, and maybe the Talent Officer is an incorrect example, but the Chief Innovation Officer is a new position, not in the 15 budget, correct? But that's being funded in 16 and 17.
That is correct.
Talent Officer as well.
I can't speak to the talent officer. I'm not sure if that's its relationship to the positions in HR.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those answers. If you could please just provide the clerk with your opening statement for the record. Okay. I guess I might have dismissed her too soon. Were there any other questions? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. The next on the agenda is the Inspector General. And so if Mr. Griffin would come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so I hope you'll bear with me. I think that if Mr. Trump were here, he would say that I'm low energy today. I will make it brief. My budget that's been proposed is $793,000. That's about a 25% decrease from 2012. That is a challenging budget. We're going to do the best we can with it. But as you know, the IG was created in the wake of the largest public corruption scandal in the history of Cuyahoga County, and we are primarily the county ethics officer. We conduct background checks, provide ethics opinions, register financial disclosure forms, secondary employment forms. But one of my tasks coming on was to change a little bit of the focus and to look for contracts and ways to bring money back into the county. So we're going to continue to try to do that, but it'll be tough. One of the first things that I did when I came on board was try to reorganize and to eliminate an administrative position with the hope of creating then another Deputy Inspector General slot to be functional rather than administrative. As part of this budget process, we've lost that slot, so we'll be down one FTE for next year, but we will continue to try to work, and one of the ways we've tried to do that is to use technology better. So we have computerized the contractor registration form. We'll soon have computerized the secondary employment and nepotism forms. This will make it easier and quicker for our contractors as well as our employees. But I think that we have been successful given the resources that we have. In recent months, we've identified about $2.3 million in uncollected loans. We've identified another $500,000 that we'll be issuing a report on next week. But we have worked very hard to make things work. The budget that has been proposed cuts our general fund revenue significantly, but that's going to be made up by funds from the special vendor account. The proposed budget needs about $67,000 next year and then $72,000 in order to make the general fund expenditure balance, fund expenditures balance. I should just let you know that the fees coming into that will eventually run out. We're budgeted only for about $10,800 in registration fees next year, but there will be a reduction of $67,000. So in the long run, as part of a longer conversation, we should consider what other counties have done around the country, which is to have alternate funding models for their Inspector General, whether that's based upon, for example, in Florida, they take 0.25% of each contract for contract compliance. In other places, it's in the charter.
We tried that.
We tried. Great minds think alike.
That's right. It's a Broward County model.
Exactly. Actually, I think Miami-Dade does it as well, and a couple others. But so I am happy to answer whatever questions you have about the budget, what we do, and what we hope to do next year, given our constraints.
You know, and ironically, that it works out to be almost the same amount of money you're getting in your budget now.
Yeah, it just makes it easier to plan and easier to look forward to.
Right. Any questions? This special revenue fund, you know, the dollar or the $100 registration, that's what you're talking about?
Yes, it is.
So, I question, Mr. Glassburn, how is that money accounted for in the budget?
The Inspector General will be partially utilizing some of those funds to offset an FTE that works on those cases specifically.
So is the revenue recorded and the other revenue in the top line of the budget, and then the money's appropriated down? Or is there a special fund, a separate non-general fund?
There's a special revenue account
Okay.
that houses the vendor fees from the Inspector General, and the expense is going to be aligned to that fund.
And then we just transfer it over as requested?
I apologize, this is one of the smaller items in the budget, but I believe it's directly expensed from that fund, but I'm happy to talk with other folks to make sure we get it correct.
And that's my understanding as well.
Okay. Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the Inspector General, the economic development loans that were defaulted on, could you
Yes.
share what, an up-to-date of what your department is doing in regards to that?
Yep. So one of the frustrations that I have in my office is that I get to write reports, but I don't get to implement any solutions. So we have identified those loans, and we've been working with the Department of Development and the prosecutor's office and law department to figure out a way to aggressively collect them. It has not gone as quickly as I would like. It's my understanding that the county is going to enter into an agreement with the Attorney General to do collection actions going forward, and we'll see whether that works or not. It is a source of concern, and I can tell you that my office will continue to follow up on it.
You mentioned which departments were working in collaboration with you on that?
The Department of Development and Law, and we've had a few conversations with the prosecutor's office, but under the memorandum of understanding from, I guess, 2013, those collection processes were transferred over to Department of Law, and it looks like now they're going to go and be farmed out to the Ohio Attorney General.
Okay. Can staff get us an answer to that? Or where they are at with Department of Development? Or where they at with getting that to the Attorney General? Trevor, Mike?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you. If you could please provide the clerk with a copy of your original statement.
Out of our general fund.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council.
And maybe they wouldn't be cut.
Next up is our friend every 4 years, the Board of Elections.
Just every 4 years?
More frequently for some others.
Good afternoon, Chairman Greenspan and members of council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide budget testimony on behalf of the Board of Elections. With over 840,000 registered voters in 975 precincts, voting at approximately 400 polling locations, we are the largest elections jurisdiction in the state of Ohio. I am pleased to inform you that the biennial budget includes sufficient funding for the BOE to successfully conduct all anticipated elections in 2016 and 2017, which will include next year's presidential primary and general election. As you know, the BOE generally operates within a 4-year budget cycle with expenses closely tied to voter turnout. Therefore, due to a high turnout we anticipate for the next year's presidential election, our budget for 2016 of $16.8 million reflects an increase of approximately 10% compared to our 2015 budget, and is comparable to the $17.5 million we spent in 2012, the previous presidential election. However, our budget end of $13.6 million for 2017 for a municipal election year reflects a decrease of approximately 12% compared to our 2015 budget. The combined funding included in this budget will allow us to tabulate the ballots of over 1.2 million voters, recruit and train over 17,000 precinct election officials, secure and adequately supply an estimated 1,500 polling locations, test and deliver approximately 3,600 ballot scanners, print and mail about 500,000 vote-by-mail ballots, process over 50,000 in-house early voters and over 40,000 provisional voters, add approximately 115,000 new voter registrations, and update approximately 2,430 registration records, and answer over 200,000 voter hotline calls. The BOE will be undertaking 2 major initiatives during the 2016 and 2017 biennium. Our primary new initiative will be the purchase and implementation of electronic poll books, or otherwise known as e-poll books. E-poll books will replace the paper poll book currently used at polling locations. These devices will allow for faster and more accurate processing of voters on Election Day, particularly by allowing voters to check in by simply swiping their driver's license or state ID. E-poll books will also provide significant pre- and post-election administration benefits, such as immediate update of voter records after the election, which is currently a process that takes several staff up to 2 weeks to complete. Along with most other BOEs in the state of Ohio, we will be conducting a pilot project with e-poll book vendors during the November 3rd election, and we hope to select a vendor and move forward with a purchase by early next year. The state of Ohio will provide up to $1.45 million for the state term purchase, and we plan to pre-encumber up to $400,000 from our projected surplus this year to pay for the remaining purchase amount. Therefore, no funds have been requested in 2016 or 2017 budget for this purchase. However, we have included approximately $200,000 in the 2017 budget for anticipated costs for maintenance, support, and consumables for e-poll books. We plan to begin a limited deployment of e-poll books during the March 2006 primary election and a larger scale deployment for the November 2016 general election, with full countywide implementation by 2017. Our second major initiative for the biennial budget period is the introduction of Voter Notify, which is an opt-in electronic messaging system that will provide voters with important election and ballot status updates via email and text message. Notifications will include confirmations when we mail and receive voters' ballots, alerts if there are any issues with a voter's return ballot, reminders to return your ballot if closed to the election, and notice of when to request a vote-by-mail ballot for future elections. Approximately $6,000 is included in both 2016 and 2017 for this program, which we are currently piloting with BOE and county employees. We plan to fully implement Voter Notify prior to the March 2016 primary election, and our goal is to have 25,000 subscribers by the end of the 2016 and 35,000 by the end of 2017. No BOE programs were reduced or eliminated for 2016. However, starting in 2017, we plan to eliminate one poll worker position per polling location, or about 650 poll workers, for all elections we conduct during that year. This reduction in poll workers of approximately 8.5% will be made possible by the implementation of e-poll books and result in estimated savings of $112,000. Additionally, we implemented a precinct reduction plan this summer that allowed us to consolidate 72 precincts, or about 7% of the precincts in the county. The reduction, which was made possible largely as a result of our robust vote-by-mail program, will result in a direct savings of over $50,000 per countywide election, or over $100,000 in 2016 alone. The BOE full-time staff includes 93 full-time positions and 4 board members, and we did not request any reductions or additions to our personnel levels. Our budget does include a 2% across-the-board raise for full-time employees in both 2016 and 2017, as well as a 5% raise for board members as required by the state of Ohio's budget bill passed this summer regarding compensation for elected and appointed officials. At this time, we have no request for additional funding in our 2016 and 2017 budget. I'd like to thank the county executive and his staff for their understanding of our 4-year budget cycle, which made it all but impossible to implement any cuts to our budget for a presidential election year. Without severely affecting the quality and breadth of services we must be able to provide the voters of Cuyahoga County. With that said, I'd like to remind County Council and the County Executive that our budget is based off certain assumptions regarding ballot length, total voter turnout, and the number and size of special elections, and that are largely out of our control. While our assumptions are based on past experience and reasonable expectations, additional funding may be needed if the circumstances exceed our assumptions. However, we have not faced such a scenario in 7 years. I have no reason at this time to believe that additional funding will be needed. Further, during our talks with the county executive regarding our budget, we discussed the possibility of establishing an elections revenue reserve that would be funded by the revenues collected from the elections chargebacks to our political subdivisions. This reserve could be used for both provide supplemental funding in future even years for higher voter turnout, presidential and gubernatorial elections, as well as the additional funding in the event of an unplanned election or other unforeseen circumstances that would require an increase in expenditures. I look forward to the possibility of working with the county executive and the county council on this initiative. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I have Sean Webster, our fiscal service manager, who can provide any technical questions or any detailed questions that I don't want to answer. Thank you.
Ms. Conley?
To the chair, to the director, if issue 1 passes, will this have any impact on BOE precinct reductions or anything like that? You've
No, it
quoted a
won't.
lot of savings.
It would not have any impact. We would have to just reassign the precincts within the new congressional boundary lines, but it would have no direct impact or savings to the county.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, a couple questions. E-poll books. So as I understand the state law, the county purchases them and gets reimbursed in the state,
That is correct.
and we get reimbursed 85%.
Correct.
Okay, and it's your expectation in Q1 to make that purchase?
Yes, it
First quarter
is.
of next year?
Yes, it is.
So just from a cash flow perspective, have we appropriated for this temporary use of reserves to account for, what do you anticipate the cost to be? The initial 100% cost?
The initial 100%, Sean, do you want to come up here? It will be, this is one of the questions I'll make him answer.
Okay.
And there has been talks with appropriating the funding.
So you just state your name.
Sean Webster, Fiscal Services Manager for the Board of Elections. Mr. Chairman, the final cost of the purchase will be, the specific final cost will kind of be dependent on the pilot project that we're going to implement. That'll determine what we actually will need. But I expect probably around $1.8 million.
And then we get reimbursed 85% of that?
Up to 1.45 million, yeah.
Up to, that's our county max?
That's right.
Is one, okay.
Chairman, we anticipate that regardless of the 85% that they are reimbursing us and the 15% required match from us to have, to still need approximately $200,000 more to cover the cost of what we will need here in Cuyahoga County.
Okay. So I guess my question is, do we have, Mr. Glassburn, do we have this, the 1.8 as a temporary use of reserves, at least identified?
We do have this amount contemplated in the budget, but we are setting it up procedurally a little bit more like a grant than as an operational expense.
Okay, I just want to make sure we do have it covered though, so.
Yes.
Very good. The, Mr. McDonald, you made the statement of $100,000 reduction in 2016, but I didn't understand what you were talking about.
What's that for?
Mr. Chairman, that's regarding the precinct reduction that we implemented this year. Without the precinct reduction, we would have spent an additional roughly $100,000 on both the primary and the general, 50 each. So with that precinct reduction, we're going to save $100,000 in fewer poll workers needed, fewer printed materials that we'll have to deliver.
Okay.
Yeah. As you're aware, we do precinct reviews periodically, and in the last one we did prior to this, we did a major reduction in the city of Cleveland. So the 72 that we reduced this year primarily affected suburban locations and precincts.
Okay. And then it is your expectation, you're down to what, 900 precincts currently?
972.
972. And it's your expectation then to have them fully staffed in 16, which is, what's a fully staffed complement look like per precinct?
Well, it's per precinct, it would be 4 poll workers, including a presiding judge. And then what we would have is an additional employee, which is called at the voter assistance table, and they vote provisional employees. And then we have an additional person within the location. Most of our precincts are not single, most of our locations are not single precinct locations. So that extra person provides services for all of the precincts that are located or housed in that location.
So it's at least six per precinct, but some voting locations might have an additional, every voting location will have an additional 1 person.
Correct.
Okay. Now in 2017, you said that there would be a reduction, you're going to reduce 1 poll worker in 2017.
That's
correct?
true. We think with the e-poll books that we will not need that additional employee at the VAT table, so we could offset that with one of the 4 remaining poll workers and move them over there due to the ability to check people in quicker.
And that's a BOE initiative? I mean, that wasn't a budget constraint that you were having to work within. That's something you initiated?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Ms. Brown?
Mr. Chair, point of clarification to Director McDonald. It's good to see you.
Good seeing you.
You mentioned there are 972 precincts. How many locations?
There are approximately 400 locations.
400 locations. So would it be accurate to say that there's 6 people per location versus per precinct, because some locations house more than one precinct, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's 6 per location.
Well, it's a minimum of 4 per precinct. So for example, if we have 2 precincts in one location, so each precinct would have 4 poll workers. That would be 8, and then we would have an additional polling location coordinator for the location, and then 1 member at the VAT table.
Okay, that's a lot. Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Simon?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you tell me what the robust by-mail voting program is? I mean,
Our robust vote-by-mail voting program is based off of what other counties and how we are so much farther along with absentee or vote-by-mail in Cuyahoga County. If you look at, we right now for the November election, we have probably 80,000 vote-by-mail application requests. As the next county our size, Franklin County has
10,000.
Has approximately 10,000. And that is because since 2008, we have made an active effort to really beef up our vote-by-mail program. Although it was reduced by state legislature that they can only send it out every 2 years. Send out every 2 years, but it's ingrained in Cuyahoga County residents that it is still out there, and they do call us and they do fill out vote-by-mail applications, as well as one of the big things that we do differently in Cuyahoga County than any other county is we send out a voter information guide. And on that voter information guide, it prompts people to vote by mail and gives them how they can get the vote by mail application.
okay, I just wonder why we're shutting down precincts when we had we actually had a robust by-mail voting process before the state put restrictions on it, and we had more precincts, and we had what I would consider robust mailing. But now we're shutting down voting locations with a less impactful way we're sending out by-mail applications. So how do you justify that?
Well, we're sending out, we're not really, we're shutting down precincts or reducing precincts, but it's offset by a reduced population here in Cuyahoga County. We reduced our precincts by 7% here in Cuyahoga County, and that is what the reduction in population was over the period. So I think we're in line. Our registration has gone down 40,000. We are in line with what the population shifts within the county.
Okay.
Any other, Mr. Germana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has to do with the vote by mail. This election cycle, we got postcards saying that you could go online to request vote by mail. And in my particular case, I did that, and I was expecting to get a ballot. So I went online for getting a ballot for me and my wife. But in fact, what happened, I didn't get a ballot. I got an application for a ballot. I had to send that in, and then the ballot came, and I had to send that in. I'm just wondering why is that extra step? If you could identify who you're sending the postcard to, and that person responds, and you send me an application, couldn't you have sent the ballot?
Absolutely, we could have, but state law or mandated that you have to fill out an application request prior to the ballot being sent to you. down the road, possibly, that we will allow, or the law will allow people to go straight on our website and request a ballot, and we link that up with your voter registration database. But currently, we are required and mandated by directives in the Secretary of State's office to request a vote-by-mail application. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, it's just we can't send out unsolicited applications, so that a voter has to submit an application first in order for the ballot to be sent out.
It's basically out of our control.
Well, I think that needs to be corrected somewhere. I don't know where it gets corrected, but.
That's a state issue, correct?
Yes.
Right, because if you identified me in order to send me the application for it, you were pretty confident you were sending it to the right person. I just think that's just extra step that may turn off voters saying, hey, how many steps do we have to go through to get the ballot? Thank you.
I agree totally.
Any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would just please submit your opening remarks to the clerk.
Sure will.
Thank you. The last item on today's agenda is the capital plan and debt management overview by Mr. Kennedy. Looks like you have some handouts. No. No.
Mr. Chair, if possible, could I do the debt discussion first?
Absolutely.
Just because I've asked some folks in Public Works to come if there's questions about capital. I don't particularly see them here yet, so. And my remarks will be consistent with the document that's being distributed now, so I can just run through this and answer any questions you have. Is that
perfect? Thank you.
In regards to county debt, Schedule 1, that's Appendix G1 of the biennial budget document, contains a listing of all debt obligations of the county as projected for January 1st, 2016. That's the last page of your handout that was in the budget book. The first column of the schedule lists the original amount of the debt issue. Total original amount of debt issued from non-tax sources totals $435,726. Additionally, the county in 2014 issued $137,890,000 of sales tax revenue bonds and has $361,100,000 in general obligation and other debt funded by unvoted inside millage. Total debt issued from all sources is currently $1.23 billion. In 2016, the county debt service obligations will be as follows. The amount required for principal will be slightly over $44 million. Of that amount, $17.8 million will be due related to general obligation and other debt issued against unvoted inside millage. Nearly $26 million in principal will be due. That's related to debt issued against non-tax revenue, and $275,000 will be due for the 2014 sales tax bond. As far as interest payments in 2016, those will total approximately $44 million as well. That amount includes the annual appropriation for the Flats East Bank debt, which is reserved for use as necessary. Of that $44 million, $30.7 million will be paid against non-tax revenue debt. Approximately $12 million will be paid against general obligation and capital improvement bonds, and $1.6 million will be due for the sales tax bonds. Our total amount required for debt service in 2016 will be approximately $88.2 million. Of that amount, $26.8 million will be supported by property tax collections we received, and the remainder of the $61.4 million will be supported by revenue received from other sources. Those other sources include revenue received from refunding escrow, non-tax revenue, special assessments, bed tax, Huntington Park Garage Fund, and various subsidies. As we move forward into the future, our debt service obligations in the short term will increase incrementally over the course of the next several years, peaking in the year 2020. Subsequent to 2020, county debt will start to decline on a gradual scale until 2028, when our annual debt service drops considerably. Annual debt service in 2028 is approximated at $60.5 million, and then will fall to the upper $40 million range until 2035. That's when another annual decline will occur. Beginning in 2035, our current annual debt service will decrease by approximately $10 million per year and remain in the mid-$30 million range until 2038. Based on our current situation, there are concerns relative to our ability to issue new debt to support various portions of our operations. Without additional revenue sources or some new flow of income, our ability to set aside funds to pay principal and interest obligations on new debt would be hampered to the extent that we'd have to make further sacrifices to our day-to-day operations. We do have the capacity to issue debt related to restricted revenue sources, the proposed Gateway Improvement Bond issue, for example, but the past practice of funding our capital needs through future debt issuance must temporarily be placed on hold. In this biennium budget submission, the administration has attempted to appropriately and sufficiently fund its capital improvement needs from reductions and reallocations in an effort to strengthen our financial position. We will adequately support the capital improvement needs as outlined in other areas of this budget without taking on more debt service that will require significantly more changes to our daily operations. Not included on this schedule is debt the county currently intends to issue in December of 2015. Two debt offerings will expected to be definitely occurring, approximately $9.5 million for the Public Square project. That's related to the refurbishment of Public Square, and approximately $62 million in excise tax bonds to pay capital projects at Progressive Field and Quicken Loans Arena. Also being contemplated is a debt offering to cover the repairs of the Huntington Park Garage, but this is on hold as we wait for the final analysis of bids recently received from contractors. Funding from these offerings will come from revenue streams outside of the county's general fund. Public Square bonds will be funded from property tax revenues from the city of Cleveland. The excise tax bonds will be funded by taxes imposed on the consumption and sale of beer, wine, liquor, and cigarettes in the county. It is hoped that the parking garage revenue will fund the bonds issued for the HPG project for its repairs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Director Kennedy, in the schedules that we receive in the budget book, particularly the schedule on the general fund, there's all the operating expenses, and then under the operating expense, it has another category which is other financing uses, and my question is whether that item is entirely debt service, or does that category include some other things, and if so, what are they?
Councilman Miller, that does include other things. That would include subsidies and transfers to other funds, in addition to the debt service that's allocated from general fund.
Could you give me a breakdown? Not right now, but could you send us a breakdown of what those other financing uses line items consist of?
Mr. Miller, sure. I think that was in one of the original questions, but I'd be happy to get that to you. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? A couple questions. Starting at the top of the document, I believe a number of these bonds that were issued to refinance existing debt to take advantage of lower interest rates. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, several were refunded, yes.
Okay, so just starting at the top, there are only a handful. In the first, the unvoted inside 10 mil limit, that $111 million, do you have any, I know you weren't here, but I believe that was a refinancing. Do you believe that to be true?
I do believe that to be true, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Moving down under the MedMart Convention Center project tax exempt, the first item, the 20 million, that's the note is refunding. Is that a refinancing as well?
I believe so. That is correct.
The 4 items underneath the next tax economic development revenue bonds, we are merely securitizing or issuing those bonds on behalf of someone else. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. The last item, the hotel we know about. The last one, the 137 million. Part of that, if I recall, was refinancing debt as well as issuing bonds to repay ourselves for money that the county had advanced. Do you recall that as well?
From what I've looked at, yeah, I believe you're correct.
Okay. And then the bonds that you talked about, the 9.5 million for Public Square, that's supported by a TIF.
Yes.
The 62 million for the sports facilities, that's supported by the syntax.
Correct, the new syntax.
And the HPG will be supported whenever it's issued based on the revenue coming off the facility itself.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify that, those items. Okay, any other questions? Yep, Ms. Brown.
I'm not sure if I missed it, but you said we're gonna peak at 2020. What was that number, that dollar amount?
I don't believe I have the dollar amount in here, but I'd be happy to provide you a schedule showing how the debt goes up and then drops off after that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you can please submit a copy to the clerk, then she'll distribute it to council.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the debt component? No, and then, unless you had something else to add?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Were you going to lead the next section, or were you going to turn it over to Public Works?
I can give you a brief overview of
Okay.
the amounts, and I just thought if the folks that would have more technical answers to some things would be here. So, right there.
I'm
Okay.
I'm ready whenever you are, I'm sorry.
Just for everybody's edification, I've asked the clerk to pass out a couple documents. One is, again, a summary of the remarks with some schedules that were also in the budget book. And then there's 2 other documents. One is the Public Works Facility Improvement Projections for 2018 through 2020, and then one is for I'm sorry, and then similarly, there's a document that shows expenses from the Road and Bridge Fund for those additional 3 years that were not included in the budget. So I could summarize briefly the 2016-2017 capital improvement and program as contained in the budget submission submitted by the executive. In the preparation for the 2016-2017 biennium budget, we face considerable challenges with providing sufficient resources for necessary improvements and acquisitions necessary to properly support daily operations of the county, its facilities, and our commitments to our own responsibilities with road and bridge maintenance and repair. These challenges became more difficult when we determined that it was not feasible to fund these expenses through new debt issuances, which was the past practice with respect to providing a revenue source for project expenses. Our intent in this budget was to reduce some aspect of our operating expense to provide necessary funds to support the 2-year capital program, and if possible, to seek alternative forms of revenue from other funds. In our preliminary submission, we have presented a plan for 2016 and 2017, fully funds our capital improvement needs without seeking additional authority to issue debt to either partially or fully cover capital expenses. Our capital improvement appropriation requests in the budget cover 5 major categories of improvements. Those are building and facility improvements, road and bridge projects, sanitary sewer projects, information technology related acquisitions and infrastructure improvements, and improvements scheduled for the Cuyahoga County Regional Airport. I would like to summarize the expenses projected for each major capital improvement area and briefly detail the proposed funding source for each. In attendance today are representatives of Public Works, the Office of Budget Management, and Information Technology, who can provide more specific information on the need, cost, and timing of each component of our capital requests. In separate documents that are attached, I've also provided you with preliminary estimates for the Road and Bridge Fund and facility-related improvements for the years 2018 through 2020. For building and facility improvements, a total of $34.7 million is requested over the biennium. The appropriation requests for capital projects in this category are nearly evenly split over the 2 years of the biennium. Detailed listings by project are provided in the budget book on page Roman numeral 7.3. The major expenses projected for facility-related improvements are $4.5 million estimated as necessary in 2016 for replacement of the roof at the old courthouse. $2.35 million in 2017 for replacement of the roof at the Virgil Brown Building. $4.8 million for improvements and upgrades at the Justice Center in 2016. $1 million in each year as a contingency for emergency needs that may be necessary over the biennium. The proposed expenses for capital needs related to building and facility improvements will be supported by appropriations of $36.2 million from the general fund, $5.2 million from the Public Assistance Fund. Other additional capital expenses related to facility improvements are listed on the aforementioned page of the budget book. I've attached that for your reading in addition to the summary. Relative to the needs for the Road and Bridge Fund expense over the biennium, a detailed listing of expenses is contained on page 7.4 of the budget document. Major expenses expected to occur over the biennium related to the Road and Bridge Fund are $14 million in 2016 for the replacement of the Highland Road bridges, $12.4 million in 2016 for the Towpath Trail Phase 3 and 4 commitments, an additional $10 million in 2017, $6.7 million in 2017 for the Turney Road resurfacing project, $6.8 million in 2017 for the Lee Road resurfacing project, $2 million each year for the county contribution to the pedestrian bridge project, $8.9 million for the Bagley Road Street and Sewer project in 2016, approximately 3.4, that should read $3.4 million for the Noble Road resurfacing project, and $2.85 million for the Memphis Road project. Revenue to support expected need in 2016 and 17 related to the Road and Bridge Fund will come from county tax receipts credited to that fund in the amount of nearly $42 million. $39.2 million is expected to be obtained from federal sources over that time, an additional $23.5 million resulting from local matches and other funding. With respects to projects sponsored by the Sanitary Engineers Department, total of approximately $14.7 million is requested over the biennium. Primary expense for this area of capital improvements is continuous work being completed related to sewer relining, estimated at $3 million per year over the biennium. A detailed list of proposed capital projects as submitted by the sanitary engineer is presented on page 7.5 of the budget book. That again is attached for your review. These expenses are funded by revenue-producing agreements with local political subdivisions. Public Works has also identified a total of $2.34 million in improvements necessary at the county airport. The majority of those expenses, which is $2.2 million, are related to the runway overlay project that has been initiated in 2015, is expected to run through 2017. Finally, the Department of Information and Technology has submitted a list of proposed expenses as detailed on page 7.7 and 7.8 of the budget book. Again, that's attached for your review. These improvements in acquisition total $4.46 million over the term of the biennium, and those are primarily tied to equipment replacement programs for computers and phones. All the funding in this budget for IT-related procurements is proposed to be supplied by the general fund. And with that summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions or have additional staff answer any of the particulars.
No, you've given us a lot of information in a very short period of time. So we'll just start, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Director, first of all, I'm happy to see that we're getting a more substantial review of the capital improvements and debt management as part of the budget process than we've had in the past. I've always felt that this aspect has not gotten the attention that it deserves in the budget process, and since we're only getting some of these materials now, the possibility is we might have to follow up with some things. But I have some questions at this point, and the first question I have is whether everything that is listed in the capital improvement plan for 2016 and 2017 is identified as the funding source.
Mr. Miller, to the best of my knowledge, yes, we have identified the funding source for each particular expense.
Okay. Second question I have, and for this question, I'm focusing on the building and facility improvements, the IT-related improvements, and the improvements to the county airport, which generally require general funding for at least part of the expenses. And my question is that, presuming that we're not issuing new debt, and presuming that on an ongoing basis that we would want to fund enough every year so that we're not deferring capital maintenance and that we're keeping up with general maintenance and not talking about large extraordinary items like a new justice center. You know, we're talking just the ongoing repair. How much money would we need on an annual basis to have an adequately funded capital maintenance program?
Mr. Miller, if I could, I'd like to ask somebody from Public Works. I think probably their number and my number would be a little different, but.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of council. Michael Dever with Public Works. When I came before you a few days back to present my budget for the Public Works Department, within that and within this capital plan, I have these assessment studies that I'm hoping to move forward with. As we talked about very briefly at the last meeting, talked about the Justice Center, and we did an assessment on that facility and the cost to do improvements to that. What I hope to be going forward here is doing similar assessments of those large facilities what you have, so that I can clearly mark out what the plan is going forward for the major facilities in the county's portfolio. So to answer that question right now, I don't have all the information available to me. But I'm hoping by within the first half of 16, that picture will start becoming much clearer.
Okay, that would be fine. I think we do need a number on that, so that would be helpful. Do you have a sense of whether what's proposed for 2016 and 2017 at least keeps us even?
Keeps us even, meaning keeps us on a schedule, so we're not
Keeps it-
continually falling back.
Keeps us so that that we're not falling further behind and deferring maintenance that needs to be had. Is it a schedule that, if sustained, you think would enable us to properly maintain our facilities?
Yes, with the exception of the Justice Center discussion.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, Director, my third question does relate to the Justice Center, and based on the presentation we received about the schedule for the debt, and that it doesn't fall off significantly until 2028. I would like to presume, for the purposes of this discussion, that we're not going to do a new Justice Center any time in the next few years. And my question is, do we have any sense at this point as to how much it would cost us to simply maintain the current Justice Center facilities, say, for another 10 years?
Well, we do have numbers available for that, and there is place marks within 16 and 17 for additional spending. Should the decision be made to move forward with the Justice Center as it is and continue to maintain it, and that stays as the house for justice services for the county. I think the numbers that I have available, as I brought up at my earlier meeting, we are taking care of the low-hanging fruit, the emergency life safety issues at the facility right now. I anticipate wherever the discussion is going to go with the Justice Center, we are basically in that facility for at least another 4 to 5 years. And so it needs to be a comfortable environment for the public to utilize. So going forward, how much would we need to maintain that facility? Based on the assessment that we did and the low price tag to just put the Justice Center back together the way it operates today, was close to $250 million. And the mechanical systems in the facility are reach the end of their useful life. So it's got to be part of the discussion going forward.
Suppose we talk about just 5 years. I just got this now, so I haven't had a chance to review it. Are there Justice Center items for 2018 through 2020 in this list? And if so, what are they total? And would these items get us through to 2020, or might there need to be more?
If you look at 2018 right now, it has various capital repairs based on assessment studies. We do have a place marker in there for to spend in the future. I anticipate that if the decision is made to stay in the Justice Center to to stay at that location and to repair it, that what'll come to light is what we need to set aside over those years going forward. By 2018, I hope we have a very clear understanding of what we're doing with that facility. In fact, I hope we do within the next year or so.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, Director, I agree with your assessment that we're probably there for 4 to 5 years minimum, just because of the debt management situation and the difficulty of putting a project together of this size quickly, you know. But I'm not making any assumption about what the long-term decision would be. I'm open to either option based on further information. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Brady?
This is a long discussion, so I don't want to make it that way. When you reference the probability, or I would say, of us remaining in the Justice Center for 4 or 5 years, how do you come to 4 or 5 years rather than 9 or 10 years? Is there some kind? What is that point? And I guess where I'm driving this is kind of obvious, but it costs us. It's going to cost. It's not like it's not going to cost us a lot of money to maintain the building. Is there? There must be some sense that we're get to a point where we'll have spent more money trying to maintain the building at some point than doing something to seriously take care of the problem. Right. Replace the building. And I don't know if that is playing into your sense of time. None of this, at least for me, with just right now in this short discussion, seems to fit with this belief that we're not going to be in any position to issue any debt for the rest of my life. So there must be some other sense of how revenue would be raised. I'm not asking you. It's a policy question. Yeah. I'm not trying to drive that. I'm just saying it just sticks out there. You can't sort of avoid it. We've come a long way from maybe a year and a half ago when we were looking at 4 or 5, just the beginning of a process, but looking at 4 or 5 different possible reconfigurations of the Justice Center, all kinds of talk about possibly turning the building, or not turning the building around, turning the entrance around, and now we're sort of, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, now we're sort of doing the minimal maintenance we need to do, basically because that's all we can afford to do. So, any sense from maybe anybody, and maybe you're not the right person, and maybe this isn't the right time, but what will be the process that the administration will use to try to move forward in terms of making these decisions? I don't really care who answers, or if anybody even knows.
Yeah, I think there's a few different options. Maybe something that in public safety to delve into. As far as the timeline, it's probably a good assessment of what Mike gave. I know there were previous studies done. I want to say last year. And I know that it's definitely something that the administration is going to take a hard look at, and it may be something to address and to delve into Councilman Gallagher's committee. But I think that assessment, those years, just at a minimum, are probably pretty accurate.
All right. Well, I'll just finish up. It just seems to me there's going to have to be something else out there, something novel, something out of the box that that isn't part of this discussion today and doesn't necessarily need to be. But given everything I'm hearing in terms of the way the administration views this, it seems like there's going to have to be an entirely different approach to doing something with that, there down the line. That's all.
When we did the initial assessment of the facility, we even looked at the phasing, if we were to stay currently where we're at, and the phasing of how long it would take to do the rehabilitation. And that was over almost a 10-year period, because obviously it's still an active building. So it's temporarily, if you stayed in the facility, it's taking a few floors out at a time and rehabbing them. So it's a long and lengthy process. Any way we go, even if you built an entire new, very expensive. Very expensive, so.
Very satisfying results at the end of the long period of time. That would be just a matter of opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Any questions? I have a couple. So just looking at the capital improvement program document that we just received, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but the fourth paragraph from the bottom starts the building facility improvements, a total of 34.7 is requested for the biennium. But then when you go down the last paragraph, it says the proposed expenses for capital needs related to building and facility improvements will be supported by appropriations of 36.2. So and the reason I bring this up is in the budget, as I understand it, there's 20 million per year, 17 general fund, 3 HHS. So obviously, one's higher, one's lower. Or actually, I'm sorry, they're both higher than what I understand to be in the budget. So what's going to be the request, 34.7 or 36.2?
Mr. Chair, that most probably is a typo there that I will have to check into. And do you have a copy of the budget book?
Mr. Chairman, the second paragraph, the numbers in both paragraphs are correct, but the label in the second paragraph where it says building facility improvements, that's the entire capital improvement plan cost. That's the facilities, that's the IT, that's the airport, that's the whole thing.
The 36.2.
The 36.2 and then the 5.2 of public assistance.
Right,
So that adds up to about 41.4.
Okay, so this 36.2 is the number, is what you're saying, and that includes the IT, that's on the next page. So that includes 2.3 in public works for the airport. It's a 34.7 plus 2.3 plus 4.6.
It's the funding sources, 36.2 to the general fund, 5.2 to the PA fund.
Right.
For those things that were categorized as the airport, facilities, and IT related.
So that's 41.4, but in the budget's 40. So are we over budget by 1.4 million over the biennium?
The budget does have the 41.4. The $20 million a year figure has been used to describe the general process, but it's not exactly $20 million on the dot.
Okay, we'll have to looking through everybody to Mr. McAleer to make sure we capture that. The other thought on the second page under the road and bridge over the biennium, it has $2 million each year for the county contribution to the pedestrian bridge. Currently in the budget, included in the $65 million worth of debt issuance, the $65 million worth of reserve on demand is $10 million for the pedestrian bridge. So what is this $2 million contribution to the bridge?
It is reimbursement of general fund dollars, Mr. Chairman. So there's $10 million being advanced of general fund dollars right now, similar to how we have done capital projects up until this point, and then a debt issuance would be done. Instead of doing a debt issuance, we are doing the $2 million annual repayment from the Road and Bridge Fund until the $10 million is returned to the general fund.
So we're going to self-fund the bridge, our 10 million, effectively, and then we're going to repay it $2 million a year.
Correct.
once again, this may beg a further discussion, but the discussion of including the entire complex. We already have the convention center, the global center, and the hotel as one complex. Obviously, it's being budgeted that way. Insofar as the 0.25% sales tax being appropriated, there may be a larger discussion, an opportunity to once again address some greater cash flow needs insofar as including the pedestrian bridge debt service. If we go that route, once again, the free up cash flow to be satisfied with the 0.25% sales tax appropriated to the cluster.
Mr. Chairman, I would just caution that the Road and Bridge Fund can only be used for roads and bridges, and would not be eligible for use and for anything else associated with that part of the entire hotel convention center.
No, I understand
complex.
that. That's what
so
I'm saying.
to back out these funds and to use the convention center dollars would not free up this $10 million to be utilized in some other way in the general fund.
Well, it would in the sense that the 10 million that we're self-funding could be bonded. It would be bonded with the dedicated revenue stream coming in off the 0.25% sales tax, thus freeing up $10 million. And actually going beyond that, it then frees up $2 million for 5 years in road and bridge to go towards road and bridge projects.
If the county chose to bond, that's correct.
Okay, all right, let's just, I'm looking back to Mr. McAleer to make a note of that. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks. Any public comment unrelated? No. All right, I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank our staff for their patience as we've gone through these 3 days worth of budget hearings. We're not done, so don't anyone think that we're done here. We will reconvene next Thursday, at which time we'll hear from the Court of Appeals, our county prosecutor, and the Adams Board. In between then, if my colleagues have any recommendations, just comments, suggestions, please forward them to our staff, to Mr. McAleer, and you will be receiving documents along the way. So when we come next week, we'll be prepared. Moving along the agenda, is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, I ask no public comment, and we are adjourned.